Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
We made this.
Hailing frequencies are open. I'm your host, Ian Buckley, and welcome to We Are Starfleet, discussing strange new worlds here on the We Made This network. My number one today is Craig McKenzie, here to break down episode 2 of season 2, Ad Astra Per Aspera. How are you today, Craig?
Hello, I'm good. I've had some technical issues of the day, but I'm here, and everything is under control. Everything is online.
Great. Let's get into the discussion of this week's episode. So briefly, after Captain Pike bargains for the services of a preeminent Illyrian civil rights lawyer, Una-Chian Riley defends her past and fights for her future in Starfleet as Strange New Worlds gives us its own Star Trek courtroom episode. Okay, cards on the table. I really enjoyed this episode. If I had to pin a rating to it, it might be like a 9 out of 10 for me. I found it challenging, thoughtful, moving. I know we're probably going to have some nitpicks, but how did you feel?
Same, really. I would be hovering around the 9 rating myself. I think it's up there with some of Trek's best trial episodes.
Yeah.
I know that it's popular to say on podcasts or online, this is the best episode of Star Trek ever, but I'm not prepared to go that far. It is, however, up there with some of the best trial episodes of Star Trek, so it belongs in the pantheon that is shared with things like Measure of a Man, The Drumhead, whatever that Deep Space Nine one was called, where Worf was on trial, the original series court-martial episode, and so on.
Yeah, I have to agree. Do you like the Star Trek legal drama episodes in general? It sounds like you do. I've always had a soft spot for them.
I do enjoy them, yeah, and it's a really good dramatic, not trope, but dramatic convenience that comes from them. It's the idea that we have an issue that we're going to debate here, and the way to do that inorganically is by putting it on trial. So we're forcing the characters to come up with arguments for and against this thing and explore it in that way. So I think it is a bit of a cheat to bring particular issues into the fore rather than people sitting around debating it without having any reason to. So yeah, they've done a decent job with them in the past. There's some great ones. There's some not so great ones. There's the Voyager one. Author isn't the best example of it, but even then, has some merit to it.
Yeah, and the Doctor's always fun. I like episodes that are focused on him. So yeah, I think generally Star Trek does this kind of episode pretty well. But I agree with you. I think this is right up there with the best of them. I loved it. So let's get into some specifics and of course, spoilers for the episode overall. So if for any reason you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. We both highly recommend it. And then come back and join us for this discussion. So let's talk about Pike this episode. Good to have him back in the mix after the captain and Una largely sat out the premiere. I enjoyed him working the lawyer, getting her to cooperate, balancing his relationship with Captain Patel, facing his own peril as he's accused of conspiring to conceal Una's secret. What did you think of the Pike through line this episode?
It was good. It seems like my theory of Pike being pushed more into the background this season has come true, at least in the first two episodes. The first episode he's in one scene. This episode he's prominent at the beginning and then he sits in the background afterwards, really. He has a couple of scenes with different people as he goes, but broadly speaking, he's reacting to events rather than actually influencing them.
Yeah.
Which it's a good approach. It gives the other characters some opportunity to take the limelight, I think.
It certainly does. And, they don't do it artificially. Like last week, it felt like a little bit of a, not a cheat quite, but I was a little surprised to have him just F off at the very beginning of the episode. But of course, that left, the rest of the crew to manage the situation, which they had on their hands last week. Fine. But this week, they at least gave us more of an organic, story reason why he was put on the back burner. He had a very effective scene with Captain Patel, who's back this week, actually in charge of or at least taking the lead on the prosecution of Una. And he has this great scene with her where they sit down, and she very quickly makes it explicitly clear why he can't be on the stand, why he can't participate in the trial, because he's known about Una's secret for longer than Starfleet has, and that's a problem for him and his career. So he is kept on the back burner a bit this episode, but it's with good reason.
Yeah, it made sense. It didn't feel like they were just pushing him to the side for no reason.
This isn't the TOS triumvirate where it's Spock, Kirk, McCoy, and then you get a little bit of everyone else kind of on the periphery. They don't really get any featured episodes, generally speaking, but this is a much more egalitarian approach to storytelling. And we're getting a lot of different perspectives. We're getting some of the Enterprise crew doing whatever they can to help Una as well. In particular, Lon seems motivated by the guilt of her initial reaction to learning the truth about Una. What did you think about her storyline this week?
I think it's going to feed into what she's going to go through, maybe even beyond this season. She has that conversation with the lawyer, and I don't know if I heard her name properly. We don't have subtitles on screeners. Is it Nira? Is that her name?
I'm not sure, because without the subtitles, I couldn't catch it either.
Yeah,
it's in that ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a guest star, so she gets her name credited, not next to a character at the end of the episode. So we have no way of looking it up because the episode hasn't aired as we record. It's annoying. So Una's lawyer, we'll go with that for the purpose of this. But she brings up the whole, you're not your genetic makeup, you're not your ancestry, you're you get to make your own choices. Any prejudice that exists associated with these elements you can't control doesn't count. So there's an element of that there. La'an's still dealing with, obviously her ancestry is very charged, so she kind of blames herself for that in a way, or feels party to it, but she's categorically told here that's meaningless. You are who you are. It's nothing to do with where you came from or what genetic stock you came from. So her guilt made sense as well, because she had that quite visceral reaction to learning the truth about Una. Although in season 1, I don't feel like they ever dealt with that on the other end. They never showed her actually coming to terms with it and accepting Una for who she is, or realizing that she was wrong to react that way.
Yeah, you're right. They don't really have it out or fully process the reason why she reacted that way, but I think we get through her actions, and certainly in the dialogue that she gets this week, we do get the sense that this is still something that's on her mind and motivating her, and I think that's good that we haven't forgotten that.
Yeah, she's worried that what she did in a moment of passion has ended up dooming her friend, and wants to make up for it.
One of the things I like about this episode is it feels pretty cleverly constructed, because the thing that La'an is worried about is someone got access to the personal logs. She's specifically worried that someone got access to her personal logs because she made a personal log entry after she had that confrontation with Una, and she goes to Uhura to try and get access to the crew's personal logs to check and see if someone else might have been the responsible party, and Uhura tells her, no, absolutely not. That's super against regulation. There has to be a really good reason authorized by Starfleet, which then kind of gives the lawyer, I think, the clue to be like, your log entry was made recently enough that there's no way the request for it could have been processed for time, so you didn't do it. There's no way you could have done this. And that kind of, it seems like gets the gears turning in her mind of so who could have done it? And in the end, she realizes that Una turned herself in.
Yeah.
And we should start talking about the court-martial itself, since that takes up the bulk of the story this week. We talked a little bit about Una's lawyer, her estranged childhood friend. I guess let's talk a little bit more about her. How did her style, her approach, her character strike you?
I really liked the lawyer. I thought she was formidable, intelligent, all those things, everything that she needed to be as a lawyer. The tension in her past with Una is something that I found a bit clumsily handled, because it gets referenced, and Una says we should talk about this, and I don't know what her name is, Mira says, no, we're not going to talk about it. And then by the end of the episode, they're friends again. So again, there's not that middle part. You don't see the point where they process it in any way. It's a bit of a weird addition because it doesn't actually really go anywhere.
I don't disagree. I do think that if they're going to make that personal connection be a part of the story, then there probably needs to be a little bit more consequence to it. It felt like, yeah, like you said, it felt almost perfunctory, like another layer of, oh, how can we heighten the drama of the situation. And it felt like it's a logical escalation of the stakes of the drama. They don't really do enough with it. I agree with you.
The foundation of their conflict is the fact that Una went and joined Starfleet and hid who she was, isn't it? But I don't think it's even that strongly established.
Right. Like it's a thing where, the analog in like the United States, for example, would be someone who was born in the segregated American South and could pass, and a friend of hers wasn't, as white, and a friend of hers wasn't able to, and so she chose to leave her home and the people that she knew in order to live the life that she wants to live as a person who is passing. That is a really compelling potential source for drama and conflict between and pathos between these characters, and they don't really explore that conflict to enough depth for my satisfaction. It's probably one of the few things I would ding the episode for a bit.
Same. I didn't see why it was there, because it didn't feed in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that the lawyer did this great job of presenting sometimes when, not just Star Trek, but like when media in general, they bring in a guest star, and this person is supposed to be the smartest, the best at whatever it is that they do, and sometimes they aren't. The writing and the performance or whatever doesn't really live up to what we're being told about this character. But this character comes across as being someone who
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say. Your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
I could believe is the best at what she does, or one of the best at what she does. She seems extremely competent, extremely confident, and she does a great job, I think, of presenting a character that, I didn't always agree with, the approach or tone she might have been taking in a particular line of questioning, or how harsh she was being with Una, who, of course, I know a lot more as a character and have more connection with, so I'm a little bit more defensive of her. But I thought she did a great job of presenting this character who, despite the fact that I don't always agree with her or like the way she's doing a particular thing, I could understand her perspective the whole time. I could understand where she was coming from, why she was saying the things that she did, even if they were things I wouldn't have said or done myself. And I think that's a credit to the writing and to the performances.
I found it interesting that she had her own agenda as well.
Yeah.
She doesn't like Starfleet, she doesn't like the Federation, and she wanted to take this opportunity to hold a mirror up to them and really attack the fundamentals of what this law is and why it exists in the first place. So yeah, there was that personal vendetta on her part that did feed into the trial. So as much as she was defending Una, she was also putting forward her own objective at the same time.
Oh yeah, we've got these overlapping and sometimes competing motivations where, it's clear that Una's lawyer has the perspective of, hey, this is like a potentially a big civil rights case with big implications, and I need to make my mark. I need to make this about not just you, but about all Illyrians and all the Federation, and make it so much bigger than the confines of this court-martial. And I can understand her perspective, even if I think that the particular way she, for example, might have been adversarial with April was counterproductive. Some of the things that she said to Una in terms of why she was helping her were pretty harsh. That you could tell that their friendship had been and was going to continue to be strained. And I liked all those layers of complexity for that character and for their dynamic. It wasn't just a matter of Una's childhood friend coming to help her out. There was a lot more there motivating her.
Yeah, I found her interrogation of April quite interesting, actually. It was the point about you break laws when it suits you, so here's all the times that you have breached a prime directive. Or someone could say you've breached a prime directive. Did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And then he still had to stand up and say, but I agree with this law. And then it shines a light on the fact that this law exists out of fear and always has. And we know that that fear will continue well into the 24th century because we know that Bashir is only allowed to stay in Starfleet under a technicality later on. So I love it when they challenge the Federation's ideals and hold a mirror up to them, as they do here, where they just point out that you don't actually, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't actually practice what you preach in all cases.
Right, yeah. The rule of law, means that you apply the same rules to everyone equally, regardless of their circumstance, regardless of their station in life, their class, how powerful or how powerless they may be. Everyone is treated the same under the law. Where I think her approach to April bumped me a little bit was in the way she went about making the point, because the point is absolutely one well worth making. I love that she was making it, but she seemed like she was so confrontational with April because she wanted to, based on what she was saying to Una in the following scene, she wanted to make this case a big deal, to make it about the Federation as a whole being on trial, about this being an unjust law, about changing policy. But the circumstances don't really lend themselves to that motivation. There's no jury to sway. There's no media coverage. And a lawyer as sophisticated herself, I feel like she must have known that if she got too combative, the whole exchange was going to be stricken from the record anyway, which it was, which would render her motivation for wanting to kind of make this big point kind of moot. She could have made the same point by saying to April all of these things, but by not coming at him quite so hard and making it like he's the one on trial, she could just have made the points. And I still think they're points well worth making. I wish that maybe the examples she had found of April breaking protocol were not all examples of him breaking the Prime Directive to like save millions of lives, which they all were, because like,
Yeah.
you know, in the abstract, what you're talking about is saying, you know, like, well, I don't understand. Why did you break the rule to save millions of lives, but not break this rule to essentially let someone get into college when they weren't allowed to? You know what I mean? Like, he's essentially, you know, she's asking him why he wouldn't lie on this person's college application versus why he wouldn't follow a rule that would result in millions of people dying. Like, to me, ethically, morally, those are two slightly different questions. I think the show could have done a better job of acknowledging that. I also personally would have loved a little bit more explanation of, you know, for the non like deep lore Trekkies like us to explain in more specific terms why these laws were made, rather than sort of vague, well, it's to prevent genocide, it's because of the eugenics. Okay, but like, what does that mean? Because we're talking about the whole genetic engineering thing. We're talking about like space Hitler again, right? We're talking about a genetically engineered super race that was like trying to take over the world and beyond. So like there is an element of, you know, it's not just about, oh, we're a little bit icky on the whole genetic engineering idea. It's like, no, we don't want another Holocaust. That's essentially what we're saying, is we don't want another one of these things happening. Like this specific technology. It's like banning AI after like AI tried to like take over the world and kill millions of people. I would have loved a little bit more pushback on that specific idea, because while I agree with the civil rights lawyer in this case, I think there could have been a little bit more specific discussion as to like why these laws actually were made.
It's also interesting when you look at it from a Federation perspective, because you can understand why the humans would be averse to genetic engineering. What about the Vulcans? What about the Andorians, etc.? Why? What do they think about it? Do they care? I'm sure in Enterprise, Archer asked Phlox about genetic engineering, because apparently it's common in Denobula, and Denobulans might be in the Federation for all we know at this point. So how do you square that circle? So it's and you have a Vulcan in the room as well on the legal side. So I wonder if it's like, okay, this is a law that humans forced on us when the Federation was formed. That was one of the conditions of entry. I don't know, but why? Like, why is it? Why are all the other races so afraid of it?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I agree. So, you know, it's not like a big problem that I have with the episode. This is what I would call a nitpick, but it was something that bumped me a little bit. Was I felt like the exploration of the whys behind this draconic law. I felt like that exploration was a little lacking as well.
Yeah, they don't really get into the root of why it exists. I mean, other than as you say, the vagaries of cause Khan and stuff. But Khan didn't take over the Federation, he took over Earth. So why are Vulcans bothered? Surely
right, like
why
would Vulcans care about a megalomaniac who took, you know, who started a war in like the late 90s, early 2000s, whatever the current canon is. And yeah, like it doesn't track for me necessarily. But it is in keeping with established canon in terms of, like, we know the Federation has this thing about genetic engineering. We know they're going to continue to have it for a long time. So to a certain extent, there's only so much they can do. They've already been a little loosey-goosey with some canonical stuff. This is not one that they're going to just wave their hands and do away with, at least.
Yeah. And I think the way to get around it with the verdict is quite interesting, because it allows it to only apply to Una, and they can still go on to persecute other genetically engineered people in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting, because it does seem like they allow for this loophole, essentially. I mean, I guess it applies to Una, but essentially, like, the legal principle that they're talking about is saying, well, the Federation oppresses Illyrians, so any Illyrian who comes to the Federation for asylum will be granted it. Like, I don't I don't completely understand what we're supposed to be taking away in terms of like the larger legal implications of this decision, but it definitely fit the circumstance. And I was really, for me, I think the biggest standout was when Una took the stand. I loved her story. I thought the performance was really moving. I loved how she held so deeply to these Federation ideals despite the prejudice that she faced, and the judgment from her friend who's defending her, who doesn't understand her perspective, who even at the end doesn't really understand Una's perspective. She's like, okay, it's a start. Maybe this isn't the worst place for you. You have a whole crew of people who respect an Illyrian officer, and that's something that I didn't ever think I would see in my lifetime. Fair enough. But, they still differ on that fundamental, attitude towards the Federation. And I was moved by Una's appeal to the better natures of the Tribunal.
Yeah, it was interesting how she said that the Federation aren't perfect. She acknowledges that, but she feels like they strive to be perfect, and that's enough for her. And her principal motivation for joining was, well, if she can show them that there's nothing to be afraid of, then maybe somehow they'll accept her. But obviously she had to hide, and that's why she turned herself in, because she didn't want to hide anymore, and she wants people to see that there's nothing to be afraid of. That was all fascinating.
It is. It's fascinating. It's moving. It's very, very Star Trek. I think it makes a lot of sense for them to explore this issue here with Una. It is a little bittersweet when you recognize it. Oh, okay. So even 100 years later, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, nobody's put it over the top in the same way over the next century.
Yeah. So even that sense of sort of progress that you're left with at the end of this particular episode, if you're looking back at it from Star Trek Prodigy, it's still an issue. You know what I mean? It's just it's just a little bittersweet, but I think a good way to resolve the situation with Una.
It was a clever way of doing it because it allows her to continue without ending the debate.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Closing off the issue entirely. It's the only way they could have done it, I suppose. But bringing it round to the asylum argument, I thought was really clever, because it was very much a technicality, wasn't it? Technically, this is asylum, even though it wasn't dealt with in the same way. Pike found out about her true origins and continued to grant her asylum. I feel like they need to fill out a form for asylum at some point. At some point, it needs to be logged that.
We're a bureaucracy. We have paperwork to be done.
Yeah, so it's interesting in that way, and the grim picture she paints of life on her colony and the persecution that she experienced and all this stuff, all the problems that her friends and family had as well, and it's not random colonists that are doing it. This is Federation citizens, or in some cases Starfleet officers, that are doing these things and saying these things. So yeah, the Federation is not perfect, and the people in it are not perfect. We've seen that in various iterations of the franchise. Undiscovered Country, they're very clearly racist against Klingons in that movie, for at least some of it. It just comes up now and again. O'Brien's racism against Cardassians, he hates Cardassians, etc. So it does exist. These people aren't always their best selves, and I always like it when Star Trek interrogates the Federation, because it deserves to be questioned. Are you what you say you are, or is there issues there? And there's definitely issues.
Yeah, I think as much as certainly Star Trek began its existence as kind of an aspirational utopian future society that, look at all of these people from all these different backgrounds on Earth who are working together in harmony in the far future. This could be us, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, coming out in the midst of the civil rights movement in America, like that was a very understandable perspective to want to have in your science fiction storytelling. And I think that we are just at a different phase of holding a mirror up to our society in our storytelling. And this is what Star Trek looks like and sounds like now. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with us seeing that in the far future, in the Federation, there are still people who are shitty to other people because they're different. Because you can create whatever post-scarcity society you want to create. I think one of the things that the show is acknowledging, especially in its more recent iterations, is that, like, on a fundamental level, we still have these like shitty tribal instincts that we have to work to overcome. Doing the work is what matters, right? Like Una says, like, they're not perfect. They're not born perfect, but they are striving to improve themselves. Like, it is that journey towards improvement that matters and like that she wants to participate in. And I'm okay with telling those stories. I still think you can be a very Star Trek show while also demonstrating that people are flawed, even when a lot of our other problems have been fixed.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the inspiration for it or not, or I don't know if there's something similar in the US that people could have drawn inspiration from for this episode. And it's probably not an explicit one anyway, but in the UK at the moment we have this issue of, well, it's not an issue, it's a manufactured issue from the government of people in small boats coming across to live in the UK and steal all your resources, steal all your jobs, steal all your houses, whatever demonization they want us to believe. And Una is almost that, right? She crossed the channel in a small boat looking for a better life, and she got it. But it's not the same for everybody else from where she comes from. So it's, I don't know, maybe there's a refugee story they could do at some point that suggests that there's people sneaking through and joining the Federation in their own way. But like I say, I don't know if there's an analogue in the US of anything similar happening, but it's certainly a point thing in the UK.
Oh, sure. I mean, with us, it's the southern border, right? We're not an island. We've got a large continuous land border with a country that half of my country likes to be super racist towards. So there's a lot of that, unfortunately. But also, we get the boats too in Florida, especially like back in the 90s when I was growing up. There was always stories about like folks, coming from Cuba in like rafts and makeshift boats and all kinds of tales of human misery and despair that were all over the news growing up. And yeah, that sort of rhetoric is very much a part of the American dialogue, unfortunately, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, so there will be similarities there. And like I say, I don't think it's a one-to-one adaptation necessarily or one-to-one inspiration, but certainly in there because it does frame Una as a refugee looking for asylum, which of course she wasn't as such. Technically she was, but she wasn't really. She's someone that lied on an application and joined Starfleet, rose through the ranks, gained respect, and then late in her career, the secret's out. And her service is kind of what's meriting her trial here. It's what's keeping her out of prison. And at the start of the episode, they offer her a deal to, be stripped of rank dishonorably and let go, and we'll forget this ever happened. We'll cover this up because it's really embarrassing for Starfleet to have this on their books. So we'd rather nobody found out about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and in the States, it could be, an analogy could be someone who came to the country, maybe even legally on a work visa or something, and then was supposed to, legally supposed to leave, and then decided not to, stayed, ended up having like a really successful life, contributing to the community, as so many immigrants do. And instead, the community saying once they realize, or I guess not the community, but the government saying once they realize that this person was here illegally, oh well, all the contributions you've made to the community doesn't matter. Like you're out of here. And Spock kind of alludes to that when he's questioned about the logic of prosecuting Una because she broke a law knowingly. Isn't it logical that she be punished? And he says perhaps, but it's not logical that Starfleet punish itself, and points out that she is such a good officer and that by losing her, Starfleet would be doing itself a disservice.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
It is great stuff, yeah. Any other things about this episode you want to touch on?
Something we mentioned in the first episode about the whole crew loyalty thing, as in there's not been enough time for that to develop organically. I felt that when you had Spock, Mbenga, and La'an taking the stand. It feels like we haven't seen these characters interact often enough to organically buy into that connection. Spock references something that happened in one of the shorts.
Yep, the short track.
For this, yeah. Mbenga, you can see because she covered up his daughter being on the ship. Fine. And La'an, we know they're friends from way back, but it's a difficult thing when you only have the 11 episodes before this one, and the fact that Una wasn't in the first season that much. It kind of feels like there's just not been enough time for that dynamic to bed in that they're actually trading on here.
Yeah. I think this is an issue that we're going to continue to run into until we're in like season 4. We just don't have enough episodes.
Like, now I believe they're friends.
Well, yeah,
okay.
Basically, like once we're in season 4 or 5, when they talk about how much they all mean to each other, you're going to be like, yeah, I believe that. But in the meantime, we're going to have to make do with. I think they at least do themselves credit by picking a few of the crew that do have that added connection with Una, like you mentioned, Mbenga and her have had some interaction. We can kind of extrapolate from there. La'an and her have a background. We can extrapolate from there. And yeah, it's referencing something that's in a short trek, but it is still referencing something that happened canonically. Like they have that experience, and we can, again, just extrapolate from there. They've been serving together for a while. We know they've been serving together for a while. I think that here in this episode, the performances have to do some of the heavy lifting there, and for me, they did enough.
Yeah, same. It was a small thing, and I think it's more of a lingering issue that the show has rather than the episode necessarily.
Yeah, and some of that's going to come down to certain episodes are going to be written in certain ways where we get a lot of character development, interpersonal relationship stuff that then builds a foundation for the future. Other episodes may not focus as much on character, and when we only have these short seasons, we're just going to miss out on some of that organic development that happened over the course of the older iterations of Trek when you had 26 episodes a season. Like, we're never going back to that ever. Yeah. We're just not. But
we don't have time for two people to sit about and talk about root beer. We just don't have time these days.
Goodness no. Unfortunately. But there are still shows, there are still series out there which are shorter, like Game of Thrones, for example. You have shortened seasons, but they do a good enough job in the writing and the performance, and maybe it helped also coming to that series as a reader of the books, but I felt like even after 2 seasons where you have 8, 9, 10 episodes and you aren't even seeing these certain characters in every single episode, that I bought into the relationships of some of that. So it can be done, is I guess what I'm getting at. Like, I don't necessarily think that they have done it yet here, to your point. And
the screen times are very unbalanced in this show in some ways, because like I say, Una's barely in season 1. I wonder if that's a scheduling conflict with Rebecca Romaine. She could only be on set some of the time because she's probably one of the more famous additions to the cast. So She's not
Yeah,
around
yeah,
as much.
could be schedule, could be money, could be lingering effects of COVID restrictions. Hard to say. One of my things that I have started to notice about this show, I'll have to go back to season 1 to see if it compares, but the ship just feels a little emptier. I've noticed at times like the hallways just seem a little emptier. It just feels like when we have 2 or 3 characters who are walking down a hallway and like doing something or talking, we aren't like, sometimes we'll see other people in the halls, but it just doesn't feel as lived in and active and fully crewed as I think it is. So that's something that I've been noticing a little bit in some of these episodes. So I don't know if there maybe are some lingering, budgetary or scheduling concerns with like having a certain number of people on sets at certain times, or like it's going to cost X amount more dollars to fill all of these hallways with extras, so we're just not going to do that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, even in TNG, 10 Forward was not as busy as it ever should have been.
True.
The only time you see 10 Forward truly as it should be is in Generations, because there's 1,000 people on this ship. The place should be teeming at all times.
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of, there's 20 people in here or whatever in this big room. Where are the other 980 people on the ship? What are they up to?
Right. Some of them have duties, I'm sure.
Yeah. But there's a lot of civilians with nothing else to do.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
Day drinking on the Enterprise.
They're all on the holodeck.
Yeah. Another thing that I really liked was the TOS-inspired production. You had the the coloured discs they plugged into their terminals for information, and even the uniforms as well with the medals on them and stuff. It's very TOS.
Yep. The little when they're on the witness stand, the little thing they put their hand on from court martial. That's pretty cool. I like that callback. And I notice a lot of little, not just in this episode, but some of the other ones this season, like little production design details, the little colorful, like candy colored buttons that are being pressed on some of these stations. Very TOS design, aesthetic, and I love it. So yeah, definitely appreciate it.
They've said that as we get a bit closer to the time of the original series, they'll start peppering in more production elements like that, little visual details.
Hey, I dig that. That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. You have to imagine you have to question the logic of having those colored discs, and even now it would be ludicrous to have something like that holds data.
Yeah, it would be a little silly. The pads,
as opposed to a tiny flash drive.
Right. Like, oh, here's this file. I'm not going to send it digitally to you. I'm going to hand you this pad.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of documents. Here's a box full of pads but they just have text on it.
Amazing. Yeah. I love those little technological idiosyncrasies because of how crazy old this franchise is.
Yeah. But now they can use their iPads to call each other and stuff like that. So they've kind of added in modern tech to the old tech as well.
All right. Any other notes for this week's episode that you want to share?
I laughed at the scene where Spock was talking to the Vulcan litigator guy, whose name I didn't hear properly, and you had Ortegas and Mbenga at the table nearby, with Ortegas just coming up with their own version of how the conversation would have went, and Mbenga's like, no, they hate each other, look at them. Look, you can tell. And then Spock stands up and he does the little, where he constricts a bit, and then he comes over and says, sorry you had to see that outburst.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that too. We joked just a minute ago about how, these shows don't have any more time for root beer scenes, but this was a little bit of a root beer scene. You just have some characters hanging out. We get to see them socializing on their own. They're noticing something about Spock. Ortegas thinks that they're buddy-buddy because they're both Vulcans, and Mbenga's like, no, you gotta pay attention to the body language. They hate each other. I thought that was great.
And Spock's connection to that other Vulcan has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the episode as well.
Correct.
So, yeah, it does qualify as a root beer scene, actually.
All right.
We should hand out a root beer award in episodes.
There we go.
Maybe we should bring that in.
All right. Any other nitpicks? Any other notes at all?
No, I think we about covered it. It's a complicated one because it's the trial thing, and it's analysing that can be a challenge, especially if you're not a lawyer. It's one of those. I don't know if this is good lawyering or not because I'm not one, but I'm sure there'll be YouTube channels that do it. There is one called Legal Eagles that I watch sometimes where they do breakdowns of these things.
Yeah. They do a great job breaking down like legal dramas that are set in contemporary times because they can say, oh, that's not how anything works. It's a court-martial in Starfleet. I think any lawyer is going to be like, we don't fucking know. They're making this up as we go along. Like, who knows? Like it seems like one doesn't have a right against self-incrimination even, or like there's no right to remain silent in the Federation, it seems. Or maybe that's just because this is a court-martial. Again, like, we don't really know what the rules are here. So it is tough to analyze.
There's also no conflict of interest because Patel is. There's also no. Start again. There's also no conflict of interest because Patel's allowed to be the lawyer that's going after Una despite her connection to Pike and presumably to her in some way as well.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that no one even broached the subject of, is this a conflict? Like, should you be allowed to present this case? Like, I'm a little surprised your hard-ass Vulcan boss didn't pull you off it immediately.
Even Measure of a Man has that problem, doesn't it? It's I have no staff out here, so Riker, you're now trying to prove that Data's just a machine and is property. It's your job now. You have no staff here. Get someone out then. Do we have to do this now? And also, Riker is Data's friend, so yeah, you can't really trust him to do on this case.
Right. You can threaten him, which she does, with, hey, if you don't do your best job, I'll know, and I'll find him guilty or whatever, find him not worthy of independence. And yeah, you can say that as much as you want. You still wouldn't put a defendant's friend on the legal team on either side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's silly, but it's one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek ever made, and you overlook it because of how good it is.
Yeah, and I think this episode falls into that category of, yeah, like there are little nitpicks that we could have and do with this episode, but it's really good. It's very, very good.
Yeah, it outlines the arguments really well, explores them really well, and manages to come to a conclusion that doesn't break canon.
Yeah. Yep. Really, really good effort overall. Great job, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah. But season 2 is shaping out to be pretty good.
I agree. Yeah, I've definitely been enjoying it so far. All right. So, any plugs? You want to plug social media or other projects you got going on?
Yeah. So Kneel Before Blog is the best place to find me. That's kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. I'm reviewing this show. I'm reviewing Superman and Lois. The odd film as well. My TV output is going to go massively down actually pretty soon. I'll be doing Secret Invasion as well, and there's an attached podcast we talk about similar stuff. I've got a backlog of editing that I need to pile through, but coming soon will be a conversation about the Flash's final season, the Flash movie at some point as well, but that's not even been recorded yet, and we'll be talking about Guardians 3, Spider-Verse, other stuff. So have a look over there. It's on Facebook and Twitter. You can just type it in. And if you want to engage with me personally, you can find me under Nemesis4909 on Twitter, which is originally not a Star Trek reference, as I'm obliged to say. It started life as a Resident Evil reference. So that's me.
Excellent, excellent. And you guys can hear more of me on The Way, Illumination Above All, Movieversaries, as well as other random guest spots around the network. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of We Are Starfleet, a part of the We Made This podcast network. Please like, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars wherever applicable. Your support is what makes the ship go, but Star Trek isn't all we discuss on the network, so stay tuned for a taste of what else the We Made This network has to offer.
If I asked you to think about Japanese movies, what do you picture? Anime, no doubt. You think of the beautifully rendered works of Studio Ghibli. Maybe you picture Godzilla and his coterie of city-ravaging kaiju. Perhaps you see Toshido Mifune wandering the countryside and armed with only his wit and his blade. And I know you're trying not to think about the pale-faced ghost with long hair and creepy noises. And maybe you're a fan of the exploitation type of cinema, where schoolgirls wield chainsaws and machine guns with abandon. My name's Perry Constantine. I'm an author and a teacher, and back when I was in college, I had the exact same image of Japanese films as you did. It was my love and interest in these movies that led me to move to Japan. Now, almost 20 years later, I'm still here and teaching classes about Japanese film. What I've learned in that time is that Japanese movies are so much more diverse than just anime or kaiju or samurai. Sure, those movies are fun, but by exploring the wide range of Japanese cinema, there's so much we can learn about Japanese history, society, and culture. That's why I started Japan on Film. In each episode, I'm joined by a different guest to help me spotlight just some of these excellent movies. We'll be watching the good, the bad, the popular, and the bizarre. Come along with us on a journey into the wide, wonderful, and sometimes very weird world of Japanese cinema. Listen to the Japan on Film podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and visit our website, japanonfilm.com.